Article 215. Feeders 215.1 Scope. This article covers the installation requirements, overcurrent protection requirements, minimum size, and ampacity of conductors for feeders. Exception: feeders for electrolytic cells is covered in 668.3 C1 and C4. 215.2 Minimum rating and size. A feeders not more than 600 volts. 1. General. Feeder conductors shall have an ampacity not less than required to supply the load as calculated in Parts 3, 4, and V of Article 220. Conductors shall be sized to carry not less than the larger of 215.21 A or B. I. Where a feeder supplies continuous loads or any combination of continuous and non-continuous loads. The minimum feeder conductor size shall have an allowable ampacity not less than the non-continuous load plus 125% of the continuous load. Exception no. 1. If the assembly, including the overcurrent devices protecting the feeder S, is listed for operation at 100% of its rating, the allowable ampacity of the feeder conductors shall be permitted to be not less than the sum of the continuous load plus the non-continuous load. Exception no. 2. Where a portion of a feeder is connected at both its supply and load ends to separately installed pressure connections as covered in 110.1 for C2, it shall be permitted to have an allowable ampacity not less than the sum of the continuous load plus the non-continuous load. No portion of a feeder installed under the provisions of this exception shall extend into an enclosure containing either the feeder supply or the feeder load terminations, as covered in 110.1 for C1. Exception no. 3. Grounded conductors that are not connected to an overcurrent device shall be permitted to be sized at 100% of the continuous and non-continuous load. B. Allowable ampacity not less than the maximum load to be served after the application of any adjustment or correction factors. Informational note no. 1. See examples D1 through D11 in Informative Annex D. Informational note no. 2. Conductors for feeders, as defined in Article 100, sized to prevent a voltage drop exceeding 3% at the farthest outlet of power, heating, and lighting loads, or combinations of such loads, and where the maximum total voltage drop on both feeders and branch circuits to the farthest outlet does not exceed 5%, will provide reasonable efficiency of operation. Informational note no. 3. See 210.19 A. Informational note no. 4. For voltage drop for branch circuits. 2. Grounded conductor. The size of the feeder circuit grounded conductor shall not be smaller than that required by 250.1-2, except that 250.1-2F shall not apply where grounded conductors are run in parallel. Additional minimum sizes shall be as specified in 215.203 under the conditions stipulated. 3. Ampacity relative to service conductors. The feeder conductor ampacity shall not be less than that of the service conductors where the feeder conductors carry the total load supplied by service conductors with an ampacity of 55 amperes or less. B. Feeders over 600 volts. The ampacity of conductors shall be in accordance with 310.15 and 310.60 as applicable. Where installed, the size of the feeder circuit grounded conductor shall not be smaller than that required by 250.1-2, except that 250.1-2F shall not apply where grounded conductors are run in parallel. Feeder conductors over 600 volts shall be sized in accordance with 215.2B1, B2, or B3. 1. Feeders supplying transformers. The ampacity of feeder conductors shall not be less than the sum of the nameplate ratings of the transformers supplied when only transformers are supplied. 2. Feeders supplying transformers and utilization equipment. The ampacity of feeders supplying a combination of transformers and utilization equipment shall not be less than the sum of the nameplate ratings of the transformers and 125% of the design potential load of the utilization equipment that will be operated simultaneously. 3. Supervised installations. For supervised installations, feeder conductor sizing shall be permitted to be determined by qualified persons under engineering supervision. Supervised installations are defined as those portions of a facility where all of the following conditions are met. 1. Conditions of design and installation are provided under engineering supervision. To qualified persons with documented training and experience in over 600-volt systems provide maintenance, monitoring, and servicing of the system. 215.3 Overcurrent protection. Feeders shall be protected against overcurrent in accordance with the provisions of Part 1 of Article 240. Where a feeder supplies continuous loads or any combination of continuous and non-continuous loads, the rating of the overcurrent device shall not be less than the non-continuous load plus 125% of the continuous load. Exception no. 1. Where the assembly, including the overcurrent devices protecting the feeder S, is listed for operation at 100% of its rating, the ampere rating of the overcurrent device shall be permitted to be not less than the sum of the continuous load plus the non-continuous load. Exception no. 2. Overcurrent protection for feeders between 600 and 1000 volts shall comply with Parts I through 8 of Article 240. Feeders over 1000 volts, nominal, shall comply with Part 9 of Article 240. 215. For feeders with common neutral conductor. Feeders with common neutral. Up to 3 sets of 3-wire feeders or 2 sets of 4-wire or 5-wire feeders shall be permitted to utilize a common neutral. Be in metal raceway or enclosure. Where installed in a metal raceway or other metal enclosure, all conductors of all feeders using a common neutral conductor shall be enclosed within the same raceway or other enclosure as required in 300.20. 215.5 Diagrams of feeders. If required by the authority having jurisdiction, a diagram showing feeder details shall be provided prior to the installation of the feeders. Such a diagram shall show the area in square feet of the building or other structure supplied by each feeder, the total calculated load before applying demand factors, the demand factors used, the calculated load after applying demand factors, and the size and type of conductors to be used. 215.6 Feeder equipment grounding conductor, where a feeder supplies branch circuits in which equipment grounding conductors are required. The feeder shall include or provide an equipment grounding conductor in accordance with the provisions of 250.134, to which the equipment grounding conductors of the branch circuits shall be connected. Where the feeder supplies a separate building or structure, the requirements of 250.3 to be shall apply. 215.7 And grounded conductors tapped from grounded systems. 2-wire DC circuits and AC circuits of 2 or more ungrounded conductors shall be permitted to be tapped from the ungrounded conductors of circle. Qits having a grounded neutral conductor. Switching devices in each tapped circuit shall have a pole in each ungrounded conductor. 215.9 Ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel. Feeders supplying 15 and 20 ampere receptacle branch circuits shall be permitted to be protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter installed in a readily accessible location in lieu of the provisions for such interrupters as specified in 210.8 and 590.6. 215.10 Ground fault protection of equipment. Each feeder disconnect rated 1000 amperes or more and installed on solidly grounded wire electrical systems of more than 150 volts to ground, but not exceeding 600 volts phase-to-phase, shall be provided with ground fault protection of equipment in accordance with the provisions of 230.95. Informational note for buildings that contain healthcare occupancies. See the requirements of 517.17. Exception no. 1. The provisions of this section shall not apply to a disconnecting means for a continuous industrial process where an unorderly shutdown will introduce additional or increased hazards. Exception no. 2. The provisions of this section shall not apply if ground fault protection of equipment is provided on the supply side of the feeder and on the load side of any transformer supplying the feeder. 215.11 Circuits derived from autotransformers. Feeders shall not be derived from autotransformers unless the system supplied has a grounded conductor that is electrically connected to a grounded conductor of the system supplying the autotransformer. Exception no. 1. An autotransformer shall be permitted without the connection to a grounded conductor where transforming from a nominal 208 volts to a nominal 240 volt supply or similarly from 240 volts to 208 volts. Exception no. 2. In industrial occupancies, where conditions of maintenance and supervision ensure that only qualified persons service the installation, auto-transformers shall be permitted to supply nominal 600-volt loads from nominal 480-volt systems, and 480-volt loads from nominal 600-volt systems, without the connection to a similar grounded conductor. 215.12 Identification for feeders. A grounded conductor. The grounded conductor of a feeder, if insulated, shall be identified in accordance with 200.6. B. Equipment grounding conductor. The equipment grounding conductor shall be identified in accordance with 250.119. See Identification of ungrounded conductors. Ungrounded conductors shall be identified in accordance with 215.1 to C1 or C2, as applicable. 1. Feeders supplied from more than one nominal voltage system. Where the premises wiring system has feeders supplied from more than one nominal voltage system, each ungrounded conductor of a feeder shall be identified by phase or line and system at all termination, connection, and splice points in compliance with 215.1 to C1A and B. A. Means of identification. The means of identification shall be permitted to be by separate color coding, marking tape, tagging, or other approved means. B. Posting of identification means. The method utilized for conductors originating within each feeder panel board or similar feeder distribution equipment shall be documented in a manner that is readily available or shall be permanently posted at each feeder panel board or similar feeder distribution equipment. 2. Feeders supplied from direct current systems. Where a feeder is supplied from a DC system operating at more than 60 volts, each ungrounded conductor of 4 AWG or larger shall be identified by polarity at all termination, connection, and splice points by marking tape, tagging, or other approved means. Each ungrounded conductor of 6 AWG or smaller shall be identified by polarity at all termination, connection, and splice points in compliance with 215.1 to C2A and B. The identification methods utilized for conductors originating within each feeder panel board or similar feeder distribution equipment shall be documented in a manner that is readily available or shall be permanently posted at each feeder panel board or similar feeder distribution equipment. A. Positive polarity, sizes 6 AWG or smaller. Where the positive polarity of a DC system does not serve as the connection for the grounded conductor, each positive and grounded conductor shall be identified by one of the following means. 1. A continuous red outer finish to a continuous red stripe durably marked along the conductor's entire length on insulation of a color other than green, white, gray, or black. 3. Imprinted plus signs plus, or the word positive or POS, durably marked on insulation of a color other than green, white, gray, or black, and repeated at intervals not exceeding 610 mm 24 in accordance with 310.12 BB. Negative polarity, sizes 6 AWG or smaller. Where the negative polarity of a DC system does not serve as the connection for the grounded conductor, each negative and grounded conductor shall be identified by one of the following means. 1. A continuous black outer finish to a continuous black stripe durably marked along the conductor's entire length on insulation of a color other than green, white, gray, or red. 3. Imprinted minus signs, or the word negative or neg durably marked on insulation of a color other than green, white, gray, or red, and repeated at intervals not exceeding 610 mm 24 in accordance with 310.12 B. For an approved permanent marking means such as sleeving or shrink tubing that is suitable for the conductor size, at all termination, connection, and splice points. With imprinted minus signs, or the word negative or neg durably marked on insulation of a color other than green, white, gray, or red.